Hi, Sarah. How are you?
So good. I'm really excited for our conversation. We have been doing this is our third in our little series here. We've been calling it the Fun Friday Fireside Chats, but we are transforming this now into our new podcast series. So this is now our third episode, and we are calling this the Journey of the Master. It's really about your journey in self-mastery, self-love, which we'll be talking about today, and living the best life possible for you. So this month, this episode, we are talking about radical self-love and what does that mean and how do we cultivate greater levels of self-love. Truly, I believe that we cannot give what we do not have. And at least in my own experience, I'm finding the more I create within me these levels of self-love that allow me and you and all of us to be even greater vessels of love and light in the world. And so as we talk about radical self-love today, what does radical even mean? And Sarah Elizabeth and I were kind of playing around with that a little bit as we were getting ready for our February newsletter this month. And what radical, sometimes we think that means, this sort of crazy energy, but it's so interesting when you actually look up the real definition of radical. It is pertaining especially of change and action, relating to or affecting the fundamental nature of something that's thorough or far reaching. So self-love that is far reaching in yourself, in your relationships, in your communities, in all of the areas that you touch within your world and the world around you. So today we're talking about radical self-love, and you can type in your questions that you have about self-love and how to cultivate greater self-love. And we are here to support you in your journey of being the master that you are and living at the highest levels of self-mastery. So Sarah Elizabeth, how are you on this great day?
Oh my God, it's wonderful. I'm wonderful. It's beautiful, a gorgeous day here. And I'm excited. I love these conversations that we always get to have. And I love focusing in on a topic. And radical self love is a good one.
Absolutely. If you are subscribed to our newsletter, you saw that we shared a very special channeled audio on the 7 steps of radical self-love. So not to put you on the spot, Sarah Elizabeth, but I'm wondering if there's one of those that really sticks out for you. Is there one of those steps to radical self-love that you really practice in your life?
I wouldn't say that there's a particular step for me that I practice necessarily, but I always come back to what radical self love really means for me, which is
Mm-hmm.
just loving myself so much that the way that I feel matters more than anything. And that's an ongoing practice for me because sometimes it's difficult to make the way that you feel the priority when you think it's so easy to get fixated on topics and this subject matters to me and this isn't the way quite the way that I want it to be or whatever it is, but just keep coming back to that center place of really and the word radical as you just described it was perfect because when I think of radical, not only thorough and far reaching but also maybe a little out of the norm, maybe something beyond, further reaching beyond what we would really normally think to do. And so giving myself that space and that grounded centerness to come back and
Mm-hmm.
let how I feel matter more than anything, even if it means that I just have to stay off of a topic for a while. And so, like
Mm-hmm.
I said, it's an ongoing practice. But as I thought about this as we were getting ready, like you said, for that February newsletter, I was like, what does that mean for me? And I realized it means making that my number one priority and continuing
Mm-hmm.
to come back to that over and over again.
Yeah, how you feel being the number one priority. And because that is really the essence that we're taking into everything that we're doing. So if we're in a frustrated or anxious space or worried space, if that's how we're feeling, that's the energy we're bringing into everything that we do. And so the greatest thing you can do for those that you love as well is being aware of how you feel and getting into those states of feeling balanced, feeling joyful, feeling peaceful, your own feelings of well-being, so important. One of my favorite steps is also very congruent with what our channeled message was for the month of February in our master's class program, which is loving thoughts. One of the very first steps of radical self-love, in my opinion, is being conscious of the thoughts that you are thinking, especially the thoughts that you're thinking about yourself. Sometimes we just get on this autopilot, unconscious role where our thoughts are about ourselves or others may not be very loving. And one of the things that I remember a dear friend sharing in a live event that we were doing, John Burgos, was, say to yourself, I'm beautiful, I'm loved, I'm cared about. And then say, I'm stupid. Nobody cares about me. You'll notice in your body, it's almost impossible to say those words because there's something within us so deeply that knows that is not the truth of who we are. But when we're just letting our thoughts kind of unconsciously roll around in our mind, that can go on and on and on. And yet the second you say it out loud, you catch yourself and you realize how maybe silly those thoughts are that you're thinking. And so one of the things I really like to do is become conscious of my thoughts and then force myself to say them out loud. And usually that stops any of the unconscious, unloving thoughts really, really quickly because I go, oh, I know that's not true. Oh, that doesn't feel good. Oh, that's not the predominant vibration or feeling that I want to keep having here. And so you can practice that of just noticing what your thoughts are and saying them out loud helps you to be more loving with the thoughts that you're thinking about yourself. So do you have any practice like that, Sarah Elizabeth?
Yeah, and actually, as you said that, it reminded me, the council spoke about that in the 7 steps to self-love message that you were talking about. And just going to pause for a moment. Thank you so much to everyone who's joining us live. And if you're listening to this on the replay or as a part of the podcast, those 7 steps to self-love are available on the Sara Landon site. They're actually available for free through the month of February. Mm-hmm. This is February 2021. And you can use the coupon code from our newsletter and the link from our newsletter to get that for free. So if you haven't already done that, it's available to you. I want to make sure everybody realizes that the opportunity is out there. But they talked about in that message, they talked about, if you'll stop and say those things out loud, it will stop you almost certainly. And it reminds me of a practice. I don't remember where I first come across it, but if you start thinking about if you were going to say those same things about someone else, first of all, you probably wouldn't even say them to yourself about someone else, much less aloud to someone else. And that practice, when I first came across it, was like, oh, wow. And it sort of shifted the perspective for me into a whole new way. And so everything that you were talking about is very much a part of the practice that I was describing for myself, or that definition of radical self-love, because the way I feel is a direct correlation to the thoughts that I'm thinking. And so in shifting thoughts, you shift your vibration, and shifting your feelings, you shift your vibration. And it's sort of a chicken egg thing, not necessarily important to go into. Start anywhere you can. If you can't change the thought, just focus somewhere that feels a little better. And that's my primary practice. Just find something that feels a little better. And if I can eventually turn that toward me, self-appreciation, self-love is the most powerful force, because like you said, you can't give what you don't have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's so important. And, remembering that any energy that we are thinking we might be projecting out there somewhere is always moving through you first. So if you're mad at someone, or you want someone to be wrong, or you're upset with someone because they're not doing what you want them to do, or they're not good enough, or the way they're treating you isn't good enough, right? That is first moving through your body. That energy is moving through you. It's moving through this field of consciousness that is you. And you may think that you're projecting it out there, and you're then going to harm or affect or tell that other person the way they need to be. But you're moving that through your environment, your system, your body, and your field first. And so your body takes that on as truth to you. So when you're looking at someone else and you're judging them of why they're not good enough, or why they haven't done enough, or what they did wrong, right? The message that you're giving your body is that you're not good enough. You're not enough. And so to me, this is the ultimate awareness of what is meant by the law of karma. Anything that you think you're projecting out there is already done onto you into your own field. And so when we shift to loving other people and appreciating other people and seeing that everybody really is doing the best they can with what they know, it's really easy to then allow that level of understanding and acceptance and kindness for yourself. And the opposite is also true. If you practice loving thoughts about yourself, if you really accept yourself, if you really know that you are more than enough and that you are loved and you are supported, then it's really easy to love and support others. One of the other steps, which is a very interesting step, when you first hear the step, you might go, what does that mean? But one of the 7 steps of self-love in the channeled message that Sarah Elizabeth mentioned is free on our website through the month of February is about returning to your innocence. And to me, that is going beyond this place of right and wrong. If you think about a child in their innocence, they're playing in the sunshine, twirling around with the sun glistening on their hair and the sun on their face and a smile and just pure joy and pure freedom. There's an absolute innocence. They're so in the moment. They're so in the flow. They're focused on what brings them joy. And that's our innate, inherent state if we allow it. But then we get these thoughts about ourselves of what's wrong with us, what's wrong with other people. We start judging others. We start entangling. We start needing to change things and fix things. And we get so far from this pure, innocent place within us beyond this idea of wrongdoing or what's bad or what's wrong, this constant judgment. And so one of the things that I really love to practice, and this has been up in a lot of our Masters Cast conversations lately, is, just being the observer sometimes of your thoughts. Now, this is not a new concept. Certainly, we aren't the ones who invented this concept. I'd heard it before. You can hear all of this, but there's a big difference between hearing it or reading it and actually integrating it and applying it and seeing how it maybe radically transforms your life. But just observing. And I had a message on my Instagram account yesterday from someone in Denmark who was asking about that particular concept of just observe it. Don't entangle with it. Don't judge it. And don't try to change it. And I started really practicing this. Just observe it. I don't have to entangle with it. If I go into judgment of right or wrong, I'm instantly in a place that doesn't feel very good. And if I'm always trying to change something, if you're always trying to change something, it's not right, it's not good enough energy. And so I noticed the hardest one for me is usually not trying to change it, just being able to observe it. So that's a practice that you can use to kind of come back into this state of innocence. And I want to really emphasize that that's not a passive thing, right? Her question was a little bit about this concept of spiritual bypassing, which we've talked about before in some of these episodes. It's not about trying to even change the way you feel. It's just observing and not trying to change, not trying to entangle, not trying to judge it. And if you really allow yourself to be conscious and present, it's a very active, focused state of consciousness. It's not a passive turn away type of thing. If we're really conscious and focused in the moment and observing and not entangling, not judging, not trying to change it, you'll notice that there's a peace that comes over you as you accept what is. There is a level of coming into your own power where you get out of the state of just being in reaction and resistance or being triggered. And you can very easily come back to this place of innocence within you, innocence within the situation, innocence within the other, that allows for something greater to present itself in that situation. And to me, that greater thing is love. There is either, as simple as we can possibly make it to me, is you're either in fear or you're in a state of love. When you're worried, when you're anxious, when you think you're not good enough, when you think you're not enough, when you're judging yourself, when you're judging another, when you're looking at what's wrong and always trying to change it, that's a fear. that's fear. And the simple shift of just recognizing that you're either in fear or you're in a state of love, and then beginning to hold that perspective allows us to shift into maybe a more loving feeling, a more loving thought. As Sarah Elizabeth said, it doesn't matter where you are, just in that moment, a little bit better feeling can sometimes come through when we become conscious and present.
I think that's a really good point, Sarah. When I said, my practice is to get to a place of feeling better, I'm not working hard at that.
Right.
All I'm doing is making a conscious effort, isn't even the right word, but choice to relax a little bit, to accept what is. Because when you have that acceptance, the council teaches us the instant manifestation of acceptance is peace. And so I promise you, peace will always feel better than whatever worry or whatever it was that you were feeling before that. So that is a really key thing. It's not a trying to force something around and manipulate it or control it or whatever it is in that sense of change, but going, okay, I can stop, I can be present, I can observe, I can be curious. I wonder where that's coming from. Not even needing the answer to that question, and just allow it to be and allow it to flow. And my consistent reminder, be kind to yourselves. You don't jump from worry to bliss. It doesn't happen that way. And now, don't get me wrong, you can go very, very swiftly up in your vibration, up in your consciousness, but don't have that expectation of yourself so that you have this need and think that you failed if you didn't get there super fast or on whatever timeline you even thought you ought to. So relax, acceptance, peace, and go from there. Thank you so much to everybody who's joining us. I think we might have had a few people with some trouble with the chat. You might hide it and re-show it. Looks like that might be working for some people. And I say that because in there, you'll see some links we're posting to things like the February newsletter where you can access that recorded message for free this month.
Thank you, Sara Elizabeth. And we're talking about the council. If you're new to our work, if you're new to the wisdom of the council, you can find a lot more about it in some of the first 2 episodes. You can go to saralandon.com. We don't want to be repetitive in each episode and kind of go back to it every time, but ultimately, when we refer to the council, it's this channeled, it is this perspective of love and wisdom and truth and consciousness that streams through in the channeled messages, whether they're written or audio or in the Q&A that we do in different courses in our master's class program. It is a state where I sort of let my humanness step aside a little bit and access a higher level of consciousness that streams through. And it is, to me, the greatest wisdom, the answers to the questions, the highest truth of what's possible for us and how we can live our highest potential on this journey of the master. So you can find a great article that Sara Elizabeth helped us create called Demystifying Channeling. You can find out more about the council at our website, saralandon.com. So we won't go into it too much here, but we are referring to the channeled wisdom when we use the reference to the council, which you will hear if you tune into the 7 steps of self-love. You'll notice there's a bit of an introduction. And then as I bring in this higher level of consciousness, you'll notice that my voice changes a little bit, the tone, the cadence of how I speak. And, one of my favorite things one time was someone was like, well, why do you use that voice, or why do you call it the council? And I was like, if you think that I can stream that level of consciousness for 90 minutes straight without missing a beat, I wish that was possible, but it clearly comes from some expanded place beyond my own mind. So you can find out a lot more at saralandon.com. So, Sara, I want to talk about one of the other steps of self-love, which is speaking your truth, having boundaries, and saying no. And I was sharing with a semi-private group that we're doing this business strategy series that I think one of the things you learn the most in having your own business being a thought leader, being an entrepreneur, being a parent, being in a relationship, it shows up in all areas of our life. This having boundaries, being okay with saying no, and speaking your truth. So talk to us about how that shows up in your life and how you practice radical levels of self-love around having boundaries, saying no, and speaking your truth.
I love that. So, one of my favorite things that the council has talked about with respect to boundaries is actually that when you elevate your consciousness and you're existing from that place, you find that you don't even need to like draw a line, have a boundary kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's just known. And I really believe that that comes from embodying that state of self love. And for me, that shows up as me going, okay, if it feels like someone is pushing a boundary for me, I come back around and I think, where am I not respecting my own boundaries or myself? Where
Mm-hmm.
can I make sure that I'm loving myself fully and completely? Now, that isn't a judgment on me to think that I've done something wrong, but I know that the world out there isn't out there. It's all a reflection of what's
Yep.
in here, all of this. And so, speaking my truth, the other thing that I love that the council says is you can only speak your truth from a place of being heart centered. I'm
Mm-hmm.
paraphrasing, but it's essentially that. You have to be in your heart in this state of true connectedness in order to actually express what is your truth. And if you tuned in with us last month, you know that we're not talking about truth as in a right or wrong kind of like this is true and that is false kind of thing, but what is really deeply inherently aligned with your soul kind of truth,
Mm-hmm.
aligned with higher, grander perspective.
Yeah.
And so the other key piece of that is tune in. And while it's never fair to say that you know if someone is in their heart or not, you can feel. You can feel
Mm-hmm.
if they're in a place where they can receive that truth in this moment and can hear it in the heart centered way that you mean it. And so, those are some of the things that I practice, you know, so that I can express in a way that then I don't become frustrated because that person wasn't in a state to hear. And really just making sure that that's the energy that I'm emanating to begin with.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Thank you. So good. I mean, you really covered it perfectly. This whole idea of speaking your truth, making someone else wrong and yourself right isn't really ever coming from your heart. And I remember when I heard that message and really started practicing that, I realized how many times what I thought I was speaking my truth, I really was in this state of thinking that the other person was wrong and I wanted them to change their mind or change their opinion. And that's not really coming from our true heart energy, right? And the same thing with having boundaries. When, as Sarah Elizabeth said, when you really get into a state of elevating your consciousness, elevating your vibration, and being in your power, you don't really have to draw the line or tell someone no. It's just clear and it's focused and it's powerful. And so, one of the most loving things you can really do is have boundaries for yourself. And if you notice that you're agreeing to do something and it's not really what you want to do, or if you're doing something you think you have to do, there's always another perspective that might feel a whole lot better and a whole lot more aligned to you. And so, for example, if you are feeling like, oh, I have to get up and feed my dog, I have to do this, right? Oh, the dog, barks and I have to get up and do this. Or, oh, I have to take my child somewhere, right? If you then shift it to, it is my joy that I have this amazing dog that I love so much, and I love caring for this dog, and I love nurturing it, and I can't imagine if it wasn't here. And you go into the state of appreciating the actual love, which is the truth behind this situation, all of a sudden your perspective changes. And now this thing that you thought you had to do, now you embrace and it feels good and you really want to do it. And this goes back to our freedom. So many times people feel like they have all these responsibilities, that they can't have boundaries, they can't speak their truth, they can't say no because they have all these responsibilities and these things that they have to do. And the very energy of that is coming from, I'm stuck, I can't, I have no choice, that they're not free to choose in their own life. And it kind of goes back to one of the steps, which is really realizing that your needs are met and you are supported, but it's a shift of your perspective, not your circumstances and your conditions, that allow you to feel a greater sense of freedom, to feel more appreciation, to feel more love in the things that you're doing, which leads to much greater joy in our life. And then the things that we are doing, the extension of our love in the world, is fuller, more whole, more peaceful, right? So it's a shift in that perspective. So all day long, you are making choices and you have the free will to choose. You're making choices of what you wear, how you fix your hair, what you're going to eat, if you're going to eat, where you're going to go, who you're going to call, if you're going to answer the phone, if you're going to read that email, if you're going to reply to that email, right? And if you just slow down and realize that you have the freedom to choose all day long, and then you have the opportunity to elevate your consciousness, to make all choices from a heart-centered place, then your communication becomes really, really clear to others. And speaking your truth has a whole different meaning. You don't even really need to say no anymore because, as Sarah Elizabeth said, your boundaries are so clear. So I love that one. I think it's really, really, really important. So let's talk about self-care, right? Caring for your body. Do you have any special practices that you like to follow to really support your body in being your best self and create better or enhanced levels of self-care in your life?
Absolutely. And one of them, my favorite one, might sound really lazy to a lot of people. I have the luxury of being able to, for the most part, nearly every day, get up whenever I feel the inspiration to get out of bed. And something that I do is make sure that I'm rested. And I do set an alarm. It's a really gentle, like smooth, soothing alarm. So if I'm really needing more sleep or desire, my body's desiring more sleep, it's easy for me to just press snooze and move on. But I have the best cuddly American bulldog who weighs about 70 pounds, who helps me with this practice because it is his absolute joy to snuggle in bed for as long as I'll let him. Actually, I let him do whatever he wants. So I let myself stay in bed and relax. And many times I will be awake. Yesterday morning, it was probably, I didn't look at the clock right away, but it was probably a little before 6:30 a.m. So it's not that I wasn't awake, but I just laid here and I am so fortunate. And I just laid there and thought, oh, those birds, they sound so beautiful. And because it was so early, there weren't really any other sounds of stirring. There were no trucks driving around doing deliveries in the neighborhood yet. And there were really no people out and about. And there are many mornings where, depending on the weather, I may be able to hear the waves because I'm extremely close to the Pacific Ocean. And so, in any case, I let myself lay there and just bask, enjoy the rest, and go from there. Now, that's probably my favorite one, but practices like meditation and journaling, making sure it's an easy way for me to check in and see, am I giving myself enough self-care? Have I allowed myself the time to sit and do these things that I really enjoy doing? And sometimes I might sit down to journal and meditate, and my inspiration is calling me somewhere else. And self-love in that moment means not doing the thing because I thought that's what I was going to do, but doing the thing that's truly calling me. So those are just a few of the things that I do. beyond that, yoga and other exercise, because that's what feels good to my body. Drinking lots of water. That's another big one for me.
Yeah, I have to certainly echo that one. I think it's the most important thing when caring, nurturing, and nourishing my body is water. And the other day at about 4:30, I noticed like, oh, I don't feel okay. Like I feel a little tense. I feel a little nervous. I feel a little like I got a headache. Like what's going on? And I realized I hadn't hardly drank any water all day. And the first thing I did was stop, go drink some water, like really allow my body to be hydrated, nourished. And I noticed within 15 minutes, I felt so much better. But water really is something that, especially if you're taking care of a lot of other people and you're driving around and you've got things to do and errands to run and people you got to call and all these different things, right? It may be one of the things that it slips your mind. And yet, to me, it's one of the most important practices to self-care and nurturing and nourishing your body. So thank you for that reminder, Sarah Elizabeth. Um, you know, Here's the part about self-love. This word self-love, radical self-love, it's the month of love. We've got Valentine's Day coming up. I want to shift the conversation just a little and talk honestly and authentically about the courage it takes sometimes to practice self-love. And one of the very important steps to self-love is creating a supportive environment in your life, which means your relationships are supportive, your friendships, your romantic relationships, friendship relationships, family relationships, your job, your work environment, your home is supportive of your vibration. This environment around you supports you being in a good place and a more joyful, peaceful place. And I'm really glad you mentioned the waking up, when it feels right to you and let your body kind of move into the day in a way that is more peaceful and harmonious than alarms going off. You got to jump up and get ready and get in the car and get to work. I think you can relate a bit, but we both used to have corporate lifestyles. And I look back at my life at one point and I realized I wasn't practicing hardly any self-love. I realized that if I looked at what my perfect day would be, my job would be different, my work would be different, my relationship would be different. And sometimes it takes a lot of courage, and you have to navigate through change and new creation in your life to create environments that are supportive of you and your ability to practice the highest levels of self-love. And that might mean things need to change. It might mean that you honor you and what's right for you, even though others might not like it. Others might not agree with it. You might feel like you're disappointing people and letting people down. And yet, in the long run, the only real gift we can ever give anyone is our own joy and happiness. If we think about what do you want for your children? What do you want for anybody that you love? What do you want for the people you care about? Most all of us would say, I just want them to be happy. What do you want for your parents? What do you want for anybody you care about? We want them to be happy, right? If we could give them this state of joy that no matter whatever happened, they would know that they could always come back to this state of joy. And yet, in the long run, if you have the courage to really practice your own self-love and create and cultivate levels of self-love in your life that allow you to be the truly authentic, joyful, heart-centered, inspired, free person that you are, right? In the long run, all of your relationships around you will transform into being more loving, more joyful, more harmonious relationships. And that can be a work relationship, can be whatever is important to you. But if you look at your life and you're saying, my environment is not supportive of me being my best self and living my highest potential and being truly in a state of joy, then the most loving thing you might choose to do for yourself is start asking yourself the question, what would my perfect day be like? What would my perfect day be like? And when I was in my former life in the corporate world, getting up at 5 a.m., I was to the gym at 5:30, worked out, showered, sat in traffic, got to the office, worked all day, came home, worked all night. I had this life, but I didn't practice enough self-love to even be able to live my life the way I wanted to, or love fully, or be who I really wanted to be. And so when you start asking yourself the question, what would your perfect day be? To Sarah Elizabeth's point, a lot of us would agree, waking up when our body feels ready to wake up in a peaceful, harmonious way, rolling into your day, maybe practicing self-care for the first part of your day, your first, hour of your day, whether it's journaling or meditation or exercise or a walk in nature. And then, what would you do after that? And what would you do after that? And that question came through in a channeled message with the council one time, and I really started practicing that. And in a very, very short period of time, I realized that my life had transformed, and I had created the environments in my life that were really supportive of me living what that perfect day was for me. And it's different for everybody. But I just want to acknowledge and honor that while we talk about self-love and even radical self-love, sometimes it takes a tremendous amount of courage, strength, patience, forgiveness, being willing to forgive and forgive yourself and forgive others and get to this place where you know that there truly is only love and seeing a bigger picture in things, which leads me to one of the other steps, which may be sort of surprising, but allowing yourself to really, truly explore your dreams, your heart's desires, your answers to the question of what would living your highest potential mean to you? What is the greatest experience that you could imagine for yourself? What does really living fully and loving fully and being all that you are mean to you? Part of self-love is allowing yourself to ask those questions and explore your dreams and your heart's desires, or even acknowledging that maybe you feel some greater calling in your life, even if you don't know what it is. Just allowing yourself to be open and hear that still small voice inside of you that's saying, there's something more. There's something greater in you. Not because whatever you're doing is not enough, just because in the becoming who we really are and all that we really are, there is so many opportunities and so many miracles and so many magical moments that just couldn't occur if you didn't allow yourself to dream and explore those heart's desires that you may have. So I'd love your perspective on that, Sara Elizabeth. And then I'm sure we probably have some questions, right?
Our chat is a little quiet today. I think it was
Okay.
mostly because of the need to reset it. So if anybody missed that memo, you might hide it and then open it up again if you're not seeing the chat on the YouTube live broadcast, if you're joining us live today. Now, what you were saying though, absolutely. And it reminds me of an artistry mentorship that I did as part of my performing arts. And this beautiful, now very, very dear friend of mine named Rachel Strickland, who is, gosh, she is a force, like a force of nature. And she's just this incredible magnetic personality. And she takes artists through a mentorship program. It's a very intense program. It's because it's consolidated into a short period of time. And I remember as I was starting that program with her was it's not only that your dreams are worthy to be explored, it's that it is imperative that you do so. You are so valued and you are so adored by the universe that those dreams are in your heart for a reason. And it aligned with everything that I had learned, from different teachers before even coming to Rachel's work. And she's just a magnificent person. And so that goes for every area of life. We, of course, were talking about like, oh, I want to make this piece of performance art, or I want to make this show, or I want to learn this new thing, or whatever it was. But she's also a writer and a speaker, and she is a force of truth as well. It's her authenticity and truth are a huge part of who she is. And so as you were talking, I just kept thinking about her and how no matter who you are or where you are or what you're doing, you can apply this. It doesn't have to be anything specific. Like Sara said, she and I have both held corporate jobs before and had, long time corporate experiences. And so the radical shift is within. Mm-hmm. It's not that you go and because it sometimes does take courage, right? But the courage is to change within you. The courage is to make that shift within you and to navigate through the experience inside you. So that's my encouragement. And, the council tells us there's a reason that dream is in your heart. And it isn't just to sit there. Again, I'm paraphrasing, but it isn't for it just to sit there. It's for you to be able to explore and experience and expand. Those are the simple soul's desires that the council teaches us. Our soul's desires are that simple, that general, but think about how profound they are. They're so aligned and allowing that anything that you choose, anything that you from here in your human experience choose, aligns to exploring, experiencing, and expanding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really good. Really good. And truly expressing all that you are in the world, right? And so I think many times we are looking for acceptance outside of us. We're looking for approval outside of us. We're wanting people to understand us. And then we want them to love us, right? And yet all of that must begin within you, right? We can never expect someone outside of us to love us more than they love themselves, because we cannot give what we don't have. And so when you within yourself really come to a place of accepting who you are, like to me, these are the results of practicing and practicing and practicing again. Radical self-love. It's a practice. I heard someone say recently, you practiced so that you can allow spontaneity. And I just went like, oh, that makes perfect sense, right? You practice so that you can really allow spontaneity and freedom and miraculous things, right? So take that to anything at all, right? If you're playing the piano and all you can play is chopsticks, you're not going to be very spontaneous with your piano playing. I can speak from firsthand there. I think about all I can do is play chopsticks. But someone who has practiced, like Anna and others in our community who have practiced playing the piano for years and years and years, could sit down and spontaneously allow spirit to flow through and inspire them into some beautiful expression, because they have practiced to be able to allow that source, that inspiration, that spontaneity to flow through and express itself in even more fuller, richer, deeper way. And so when you practice self-love and you practice self-love and you practice self-love, it makes room for these spontaneous experiences of really loving fully, living really fully, being all that you are in these moments that present themselves in your life. But to me, the results of practicing all this self-love are you accept yourself just the way you are in every moment. You don't reject any part of you. You approve of yourself. You're not constantly looking for approval. You know that you're enough. You understand yourself, and yet you seek to continue to explore who am I and why am I here and what's my purpose. And you really come into a place of celebrating and loving yourself. And when you do, the whole world around you, all of your relationships, your friendships, and even strangers begin to reflect that back to you. When you cultivate that approving of yourself, accepting yourself, loving yourself, and celebrating yourself through the practice of self-love. And I loved what Sara said about, the universe sort of inspiring these dreams and desires. Whether you like the word universe or source or God or the divine, it's all from my perspective, it's all the same. I grew up in a very loving Christian home, and to me, God, like God's dream for your life or God placing a dream in your heart, sounded really, really good until certain parts of my life where that really wasn't convenient at all. And I'm like, oh no, God just put a dream in my heart. So we always are like, what is my soul's desire? What is my heart's desire? What is God's plan for my life, right? What is Source calling me to do? It might be the hardest darn thing you've ever done in your life, because it might require you to become something that you don't even realize you're capable of being. It might bring you to a place of having to really remember your power and get clear on what you really want and choose the experience, the life that you want to live for you. And that might mean change. That might mean you have to disappoint some people. It might mean you have to have boundaries and say no. It might mean you have to speak your truth. And so to me, these are all opportunities to practice radical self-love. And if you go and download the 7 steps to self-love, and you can print off the steps and just, have it with you, especially if you're navigating through a lot of change in your life, or you're moving towards a new dream or desire, and you haven't been on this path before, and you're becoming something that you never knew you were. You can reflect easily back on some of these steps, and it will support you in really noticing if, to how we started this conversation with Sarah Elizabeth, really being aware of how you feel, right? Our thoughts affect our emotions. Our emotions affect the way that we feel. How we feel affects our vibration, which is what's kind of determining the experience we're having. So if we go back to that thought that we're thinking, right? If we're feeling powerless in our life, and we're in a relationship or in a work situation where you get home at the end of the day and you're like, that's awful. That was toxic. Oh, I don't want to go again, right? You go back and reflect on the steps and you go, oh, how do I want to create an environment that is supportive of my vibration, which is a reflection of my own self-love? And you begin to allow yourself to expand your perspective of what's possible for you, move in the direction of the experiences you want to have, and step into your power to really create and live the life you want to live. And so I think self-love is a key, critical, imperative part of living the life you want to live, living in heaven on earth, living a life that you really love.
Definitely. And we are getting some questions now. Thank you all. We're seeing you. I see one where someone says, I've turned off dreams. My heart chakras barely function. I'm trying to breathe and just function, wanting to find something to help me live fully and heal for once. And I would say to you, you could begin with the simple knowledge that you haven't turned off your dreams. You might not be allowing them, but they're still there. You can't turn off a real dream, they never go away. You can turn your back on it, though that sounds so harsh. All I mean by that is you can turn to face things that make you think you've closed it off. And so breathing is the first place. Open up, breathe, and practice self-love. My personal recommendation would be to click that February newsletter link and go get, because it's free this month, especially because it's free this month, the 7 steps to self-love, and start there. I think one of the reasons I didn't necessarily have a favorite when Sara asked me is I've been at this practice for many years with various teachers. And so they're sort of integrated as part of my life. I don't think about them as steps anymore. But once upon a time, there were things that I did. Take what resonates with you and move forward with it, and just keep reaching for ways to feel better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have so much compassion for this question because I definitely had moments where I felt very similar to what this person is asking. And underneath it was feelings of shame. And the council tells us that the heaviest, densest human emotion is shame. And if you think you've messed up, if you think you've made mistakes, if you think you waited too long, this feeling of having betrayed your own soul and abandoned yourself, and it's painful. So then we put these bars around our heart and we stuff our dreams down in this dungeon and lock the door and just say it's too painful to look at you because you're buried underneath these feelings of shame, or having not spoken your truth or not listened to your heart. And there is I think the first step is to know that, as Sara said, your dreams are in your heart for a reason. There is a reason for the desire, the heart's desire, the dream. And oftentimes what that result is isn't what we really think it is, right? Underneath it, it's, why do you have that particular dream? Why do you want that particular thing? Why do you want that particular experience? Because you want to experience greater love, because you want freedom in your life, because you want the freedom to do the things you want to do, create the things you want to create, because you have all this love within you and you want to share it with someone, because you want to make a difference in the world, because you want to bring more love and light to this world. If you really go one step deeper, we've been talking about in our business strategy series, are you ready to be seen and heard? Bringing your gift, your talent, your ability to the world in a product or a service or a business. And it's, who are you ready to be seen and heard for? Why is it that you have that dream, right? The first answer to that is usually you. I'm ready to be seen and heard for me, so that I can experience, right, the dream, the desire that you have. If you get to what are you going to feel, or what is it going to be like, or how's it going to be better, You're going to feel better. There's going to be more love. There's going to be more freedom. You're going to have the abundance to do what you want to do when you want to do it. You're going to have the abundance to create what you want to create when you want to create it, right? And so, if you can allow yourself, no matter how general it is, to courageously look yourself in the eye and forgive yourself for whatever you think you didn't do right or should have done different. And just know that so long as you're here, anything and everything is possible for you. And what is that feeling that you really want to experience? And then allow yourself to start moving in that direction, moving in the direction of your happiness, moving in the direction of feeling more loving and more free. Yeah, good question.
Absolutely. Such a beautiful, beautiful question. And there's someone who's made a comment about the way that you and I interact, Sara, about how it's clear that we've heard one another, that we give each other the space to say whatever it is that we want to say, and that it's very clear that as the other comes back, we've listened and we've taken in what they said. And that really stood out to me because in what you were just saying, what if you gave yourself that grace? What if you heard yourself? What if you heard your heart? What if you heard your dreams? And we both said a couple of phrases that may or may not resonate for you. I said that the dreams are alive. Maybe you've just turned your back on them, but I don't mean turned your back on them at all, because I don't believe you can possibly abandon your dreams or your soul. And Sara said, and the council has said, it feels really awful to betray your soul. But I don't actually think that you can betray who you really are. Not really. You can't get so far away from that connection that you can never get back to it. So if that felt to anyone maybe a little off in any way, I just want to reiterate, like, you're not disconnected. You can never be that disconnected. You are your soul. The council has said that recently. You are your soul. You can't possibly start to try to delineate all these things as separate from one another. So I wanted to toss that in too. We have another beautiful question from someone who said, essentially, as I become the observer, I find that I feel like it disconnects me and closes me off. I don't stay so much in my heart. And so my recommendation there would be, as you become the observer, stay interested and stay curious without needing to find out where that question is really, where that thing is really coming from. Just stay in the question of, oh, I wonder where is that coming from? Or would I treat someone else that way? Or whatever it might be. So it's not at all that you might be out of alignment with the practice that we're talking about, but maybe just allow a little more curiosity and openness in your observation. And so when we say not to judge, we don't mean to not discern and not to have a preference, just not to call something right or wrong.
Yeah, thank you for that delineation. I think it's really important. You can still be discerning and not be in judgment of someone or circumstances or yourself, right? Yeah, and to me, when I really come into this state of observing, it is a seeking to understand, not fix, not change, but just a seeking to understand. So to me, when I'm in that real pure place of observation, I'm totally in the moment. I'm coming into the moment and in my power, and I'm conscious and I'm present and I'm seeking to understand. And most of the time that brings up this incredible emotion of love that almost brings tears to my eyes. And I really appreciate what Sara said, this curiosity, right? Sometimes we think we're supposed to have it all figured out and we're supposed to know and we're supposed to have the answers to everything. And, part of, I think, returning to our innocence is having that curiosity again, just that innocent curiosity about life and where it's leading you and why this is happening for you. And it's just an opportunity to play with these things and see how these experiences show up in your own life from a little more conscious place so that you can experience the fullness and the richness and all the joy that is here for you in your life.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely beautiful. I love it. So, so much from this conversation for me. Thank you all for being here and for bringing your energy to the conversation around radical self-love. If you haven't already, I recommend you take a look in that newsletter and get those 7 steps to self-love free with the code that we have in there for February this month, and implement those and see how it goes in your life. We have some questions remaining around things like, I'm going along and then something comes back up. Someone called it an old pattern, someone else called it something happens and it kneecaps me. And I would say, be kind to yourself. Just keep being kind to yourself. Sometimes old habits die hard, and that comes in this area of life too. And you can think about that in physical world, old habits die hard. It comes around in this spiritual journey that we're all on and on together as well. I'm eager to hear what the council brings us tomorrow, because tomorrow's session in Revolution is about expressing our truth. And we talked about that some in today's conversation. So I'm excited about that. Was there anything else you wanted to offer today, Sara?
Oh, I think that's great. I love what you just said. Kindness really does matter. And it's really easy to be kind to other people when you're kind to yourself. And so to the question about the, old habits dying hard, it triggers habits, old programs, all these things. Usually we judge ourselves. Usually we're trying to change it. We're in reaction. We're triggered. And so we often get the same result. But just the one simple thing of choosing kindness for yourself in that moment, choosing kindness for someone else in that moment, you might notice that the old habit or that pattern all of a sudden just takes a whole new direction or course because you chose kindness for yourself in that moment instead of continuing to judge yourself for that old habit. Yeah. So I love you. I love this conversation. Thank you for being here. I just feel the deep, just peaceful, grounded expression and experience of love that we have shared in this conversation today, Sara. So thank you so much for that. I really enjoy being here with you and being here with all of you around the world to have these conversations. We will get the replay up and available if you want to go back and revisit this. You can go to saralandon.com. The newsletter links are in there. If you want to join us for our current live channeled course called Revolution, the Importance of Love and Consciousness in Action, we have a live session tomorrow, Saturday, February 13th. You can join us at any time. Many people join the courses live, and some people join them in the future whenever it is. It's perfect. The courses are always available on our website, saralandon.com. So thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Thank you to all of you, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.